Robert Trimbath. I am the CTO for AIO Integrations. We are a managed cybersecurity and cloud solution company based out of Houston. We do business in all across the country. I do a ton of education in the cybersecurity space. One of the big things that happens in our industry is we go to a lot of these junkets where we see FBI and Homeland and Cisco and HP and all these other companies. And what we find is that basically everything comes down to one big thing, and that is end users. This is the thing this is the problem we've been trying to solve as IT people for a long time. And we're not saying that in a degrading way, but part of our purpose of this is to show you guys what's happening, show you what is adequate and what isn't adequate, why it's growing, what it's turned into as a business, and how you can really properly protect yourselves. And if you're in any kind of a business that has any kind of compliance concerns, like HIPAA, PPI, PCI, you have even more to lose than the average business does, because compliance fees can put you out of business. So, and now we have individually state mandated privacy issues to be concerned with. Texas, New York, and a lot of California, a lot of others are now implementing their own privacy standards that are above and beyond the federal stuff. So you're going to see more and more of this happening. So this is entitled "How Hackers Hack You," but I like to start off by, if are you still buying the myth? Okay, this is the myth of antivirus. Everybody believes antivirus, having good antivirus, is what protects you from being infected, protects you from being from hackers or from phishing or from whatever it is you think it's protecting you from. There couldn't be a greater lie on the planet than this. If you are using anything from like Malwarebytes, Kaspersky, Windows Defender, Webroot, these products they're based on 20-year-old thinking, number one. Number two, they are really meant to protect your computer. The problem is hackers really aren't hacking your computer nowadays. They are hacking you. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. We're going to talk about kind of a state of the union first and tell you about what's going on in our business. So the myth is that it's not there. It's not going to affect me as a little guy. Well, let me tell you the real numbers. Okay. Here's for previous 4 years of numbers. I'm going to add the fifth. We need to update this graph. We do have the fifth year 2003 numbers. There are two bars here, and they are represented in thousands. All right. The first bar, the dark one, is number of attacks in thousands. The second one is cost of remediation in thousand. That means the cost to pay a hacker if you had to, the cost to fix it, get your information back, restore it, whatever you had to do to actually fix the problem that the hacker created. All right. So you can see here the attacks here were around 150,000. And when we had our average remediation cost between $3,000 and $5,000, and this was in 18, this is when the problem really, ransomware really started cropping up, becoming really, really bad. And people were getting caught with their pants down, pardon the phrase. 19, we saw a little bit of a decline, and it wasn't because the threat was getting better. It was because they started attacking different targets. And the targets were basically, what they did is they learned from their previous year and found more value, what data was more valuable. And so they started getting in your system, finding how best to hurt you, and then locking and getting you locked out of your information. And they found that to be more profitable. As you can see, the number of attacks went down to about 110,000, but the ransoms nearly went up 5 times as much. The ransom cost approached $88,000 average that year. So year to year, it went up from 3 to 5 to almost 88,000 in 1 year. Okay. And then we got the next year, we see the amount of attacks remaining about the same, but now we're seeing ransoms get upward of $177,000, the average remediation cost. And the reason why this is happening is right about this time, they start doing things like they get in your system, but now they don't let you know they're there. Now they kind of hide. They kind of see what's important to you. They disable your backups, delete your backups. They find ways to prevent you from restoring the data where you got to pay them to get it back. Okay. So we see ransoms go up. They're just making money. So again, we're seeing this double. year over year. It slowed down a little bit, but now it's getting into some big numbers. So 2021, we start seeing a new trend emerge. That trend is they are now blackmailing the user. They're copying the data. They're not just locking it, they're actually copying and removing the data from your network to their possession, and they're threatening to release it, which now becomes, they've realized that this is a compliance problem. This is a compliance nightmare for companies. This is also, you could end up losing your business over PPI laws, HIPAA. If you're a doctor, a dentist, anything that deals with HIPAA information, financial, and that information, that's, you're open to fees like 5,000 per client per incident. If you got 100 clients, you're talking about, $500,000 in compliance fees. These aren't things you can get out of. These are things like payroll taxes that the managing partner of the company is responsible for. So these can financially wreck you, not just in your business, but personally. So it's very big. Now we get into 2022 and we really see some numbers start to jump. Attacks go up by more, literally triple. We see the average amount of remediation costs for the first time start to approach seven figures. Average remediation cost in 2022 was $991,000. That's the average in the US. Okay. 2023, the numbers actually did not climb as much in a single year, started to slow down. Attacks are almost 500,000, and this gets up over about 1.1 million average cost. Okay. It slowed down a little bit. And a lot of that is because people are starting to take notice. They're starting to take more care, but not enough. We're starting to see employee training. We're starting to see better backup methods like persistent storage. I'll explain what that is a little bit later. We're starting to see more precautions being taken, but it still comes down to one person. And I'll give you a very good example. Many of you have heard of the United Healthcare breach that happened about 2 months ago, 3 months ago now. It's been all over the news. It has cost them nearly $1 billion. Okay. They paid the ransom people 22 million, but the ransom thieves, it was a partnership between two different ransomware groups, and one stole from the other. So then they turned around and blackmailed United Healthcare again for another 22 million. They have been unable to process claims correctly, unable to process payments to doctors, process doctors' orders. The group that compromised their network was called Change, and this was we call this a supply chain, a chain supply breach. Basically, someone who was integrated into their network to process their information, a third party, got infiltrated by one person. They nailed this down to one account that was not using multi-factor authentication. And because of that, they were able to compromise Change and then compromise United Healthcare and create the single largest healthcare breach in the world. One person. We're going to get into, now that I've kind of given you a state of the union, this is a business, my friends. It is a business. It is not this isn't a guy or a kid sitting in a, I'm not going to romanticize this. This isn't like Hackers or Black Hat, where you got a few select individuals working, in a room. This is a business. These businesses are conducted in association with state actors like China, North Korea, the Philippines, India. We see a lot of stuff coming out of India. It's all over. And so you need to be aware that this is nothing that's going to go away anytime soon. And the only thing you can do is do your best by implementing a full solution to protect yourself. So let's get down and talk about what this is costing. By the way, I want you to realize there's two things I want to point out in this graph because I'm going to go quickly over this part. Business email compromise. Phishing represents the largest single threat to cybersecurity. 9 in 10 breaches start with phishing emails in the business system. 9 in 10. Okay. This is a big problem. Learning how to recognize those threats and how to exercise zero trust is one of the biggest problems we have in training regular users, because we all get busy. We're all human. We overlook things and we do things we shouldn't do. We're going to show you some examples and talk about that today. The cybercrime, by the way, this graph here, this is in trillions, my friend, not billions, trillions. This is the economic worldwide impact of cybercrime. This is 2024. It's predicted to hit $14.5 trillion this year. But in 3 years, it's predicted to be over 23. Those are big numbers. You're talking about something that's fastly approaching our national deficit in impact. Yes, I can provide slides and everything uh, for this. If anybody wants them, we'll issue a PDF slides. We'll post it up on the group as well as a recording for today. We finally got our Zoom recordings fixed. Our last two meetings, our Zoom recordings broke. So we're not quite sure what happened with that, but we have it fixed now and it should work correctly. So I just wanted to go over that so you guys understand. Now, I'm going to talk about, I talked about the myth of antivirus, right? Why doesn't antivirus work? Okay. Antivirus software was primarily focused on detecting, removing malicious software such as viruses, worms, Trojan, ransomware from your computer. It's not designed to protect you from all forms of actually from really any form of hacking. Okay. It's not designed to protect you against social engineering or phishing, the ways that people are coming in now, where 9 out of 10 breaches start. So this 94% of attacks simply just go right past antivirus protection. It has nothing to do with it. Okay. That's why we tell you that this is a myth. Zero-day exploits are another reason this happens. Zero-day exploits are exploits in the software. They're basically issues, known issues with the software that have no fix. Windows has them. Apple has them, both in phones and in their desktop operating systems. Android has them. Chrome has them. Firefox has them. Every piece of software has zero-day exploits or issues. That's why you see so many updates to your software. Like Microsoft updates, we call it Update Wednesday or Tuesday, and that's when Tuesday night they release the updates, and we update your systems as an IT company. We do a lot of our updates on Wednesday, or sometimes we wait till the weekends to do it so we can just make sure that the patches are good. A lot of times they'll release patches that will break things, so we'll test the patches prior. So zero-day exploits aren't accounted for that. And even protection software, there was just a news article today that Fortinet Networks, this is a company that does cybersecurity for a living, has had 20,000 installations breached. 20,000. Okay, and this is a company that does it for a living. All right. So it happens everywhere. Every company has this problem. Polymorphic malware. Now this is interesting because a lot of people, that's a fancy word for us engineers, but polymorphic means it changes. It's designed to change its code, its appearance, its file names, and it will deposit itself in multiple places on your system. So let's say that when it first infects your system, it might put itself in 5 different places and time release itself, and release one, your antivirus or whatever finds it and cleans it. Okay. But then a week later, a different file pops up and that one has the same code and it does the same thing, or it has changed its vector a little bit based on how it was detected before. So it has the ability to adapt. And now with AI, we're seeing some adaptability we've never seen in the marketplace before, and they're finding ways past that. Yes, they are using AI on the offensive, and so you will see that. Just like we use it in the defensive side, which we do, it can also be used on the offensive side to attack. Social engineering, which is the thing I just talked about. We're talking about how they manipulate Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, how they manipulate email, and how they manipulate through a bunch of ways we're going to talk about today. Basically, this is the art form of attacking you, making you think it's something it's not, impersonating a real actor or a real company, getting you to divulge information you wouldn't normally divulge, and then using that to attack every single thing you own at once. Okay? This is real. This is done with scripts. It happens every day, thousands of times a day. All right. So I remember when I first got into cybersecurity, I've been focused on it for 6 years now, but I've been in my business for 34 years managing IT and networks. And like Ernest, I've done national IT for small business on a national level. I've done stuff for Dell on 2 continents, and I've also done work for like Baylor College of Medicine and some different places like that. But I came up from very similar startings. I started in 1991. So this is something that is very big. It's something that antivirus doesn't account for and has nothing to do with. And that's how hackers are getting in. So let's talk about ways to reduce risk. I just mentioned a number. 94% of hackers just simply blow right by antivirus. And that's the truth, because how they get in, they already have your information. So they can legitimately get in, because what happens is they will use social engineering to get that information from you. They are now using your real credentials to get in. Yeah, Alignable. Somebody mentioned that we're seeing people and actors. I just, as an Alignable ambassador, I just had that conversation with them over the weekend. I had 5 accounts approach me with the exact same language, trying to get contact information from me, just so you know they are aware of it. Just ignore it. They are aware of it and they are working on it. So if you saw invites from suspicious people, same language, things like that, just ignore it, report it as abuse, and they will close it down. They are aware of it, and it's not somebody's just taking advantage of the system, just like they do with everything else, and they're finding a way to better detect that. So this is something that just cropped up over the weekend. Thank, John. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, so I could say something about that. Getting back to this number, we can do a combination of things to reduce our risk. So by now we've implemented a lot of companies like Google, Microsoft implement better spam filters. We can reduce the risk, keeping your systems updated. Whoever thought it was a terrible idea, oh, Windows Update annoys me. It's driving me crazy and it annoys me. I don't want to reboot my system in the middle of work or whatever it is. That's fine. Do it after hours.
Oh,
But my point to you is keeping your applications and your operating system up to date is by far very, very important. So make sure you do it. All right. Pop up and ad blockers. Now, at the time of this writing in this graph, it was not on by default, but Chrome, Edge, Firefox. If you want a really privacy-minded browser, for those of you who really want to know, Brave is a really good one. Brave. I will put that in the, you can download and install this from your app store from Windows and Apple. They make one for every operating system. It is based on Chrome, and it's basically like a de-Googlified Chrome, and it is privacy minded. It turns off tracking, cookie tracking, and a lot of other things. And you can enable things if you want to, but by default, a lot of that's off. Also, cybersecurity training employees for employees. That's huge right now. It's one of our biggest things we're concentrating on in our business is not only providing training, but making sure that people use it, that they pay attention, that they pass it, and then doing things like simulated phishing. In other words, we pretend to be the hacker and try and catch you. So that way, when you do make a mistake, instead of you being caught by a hacker, you get caught by us and we teach you what you did wrong. So we do real time teaching that way. And we find that to be a really effective way of teaching people in the field. And then there are other methods as well. There's other things that we can do on the other side, like XDR software, which is a lot better than antivirus software. It looks at network, disk, memory. It doesn't just look at certain things. Combining all these things, you can bring your risk down quite a bit from being up in this point where you're a 94% risk down to where you're actually less than a 5. So you can actually reduce your risk quite a lot by using a combination of things and making sure you're using the latest of things. We're going to have a little brief talk about file sharing. Now, a lot of people use OneDrive, and I use OneDrive. A lot of people use G Suite and Google Drive, G Drive. Box, there's a number of services out there. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you, every one of these has been breached in one way, shape, or form. Dropbox more than any of them. I do not use Dropbox anymore because they've been breached one too many times for me, or actually several too many times. I personally use Office 365 because it's integrated with Microsoft or a Microsoft partner. We know how to configure it and make it more secure. These breaches are usually occurring because people don't know how to configure MFA and they don't enforce it. What I mean by that, and we'll talk about MFA a little bit for a second after this slide. MFA, Google Drive has been compromised several times, but a lot of this has to do with not necessarily the software itself or the solution. It has to do with the security you implement. You need to be using multi-factor authentication combined with biometrics. What I mean by that is that, for instance, if I log into my Gmail, which I do have a Gmail account and I have an Office account, but anytime I log into it from a new device or a place I haven't logged into it before, I have to provide a code that's sent to my phone, and I have to use biometrics with it. I have to use a thumbprint. Some people use a face print, but you have to use biometrics with it. And by doing that, you can lessen your chance of having your account hacked or giving up access to your account by a great margin. Ernest, I see you have something to contribute to that.
no, the only thing I wanted to make sure is everyone needs to understand that the real benefit to multi-factor is making sure that you change your password I've seen where it's in certain compliances, it's now 30 days. That's the biggie because your password and everything is making it all to the dark web. So in a lot of cases, they'll figure out your email address and they may be able to get your password. But usually they're at least 30 days behind in getting that information. I get reports almost daily. I've been breached a couple times, so I get the Experian app for free. And, at least once a month I get a report from them and I'm always finding somebody else, right? I have an account here in Puerto Rico for the water company. They were breached and my social may have been breached, but I have all my credit reports locked. So if anyone tries to touch anything, I get the alert first that they tried and I can deny it. So that's how important multi-factor is.
Yeah, later on and when we get to the conversation part, for those of you who want to know how to lock your profile down, we'll talk about ways like that. What he was talking about locking down your credit profile. If somebody applies for credit, they have to actually call you and they will ask you questions about your credit history to make sure you're you. You can actually, that's a great way to protect your credit and somebody buying something on your credit without your knowledge. But getting back to Dropbox, I will tell you this: OneDrive and Dropbox love to have this little integration thing that says we'll back up your folders for you. Okay, and that's really great that they're doing that. But I want you to realize that that is not backup. These are file sharing services. These are meant to share files between multiple devices. It's not what we call persistent storage, which means it's not hacker proof. It can be changed by anybody who has proper access to the system. So if you're connected to that Dropbox or that Office account and you have permissions and that hacker gets into your computer, he can delete all your stuff and get rid of it just as easily as he can anything else on your hard drive. Okay? That prevents nothing. And it is just a simple way of, if you want a convenient way to access your files, like your contacts, your email, some files that you want to use on a regular basis, that's great. We use it all the time and it's good for that. But you should have a backup system for that is separate, that is purposely made to back up that type of content like G Drive or Office 365 content and backs it up. Because when it gets deleted by somebody, and you don't have a backup, here's Microsoft's standard answer. I'm sorry, but right here in our user statement, we clearly state that you are responsible for the integrity of your own data, not us. They take zero responsibility for that. Okay. Even if their software screws up and does it, and we've seen that, they still take no responsibility for it. So that's just the way it works. Your data is yours. It's your responsibility to back up, and that's how they look at it. So do not you can, these products, I'm not saying don't use them. I'm just telling you that they are not backup methods. The definition of a backup is it takes a snapshot of your system, puts it to a remote place that is inaccessible by the system later, and then when it's done backing up, it disconnects from it. So that way it can't be reached by a hacker, it can't be reached by someone. And if you have a backup system where, like on your server, and that hard drive is connected to that server, guess what? That hacker can delete all your backups. So that's not a backup method. Cloud backup is the preferable method. It's untouchable by hackers, especially if you're using a system that executes what we call persistent storage. It means that not even you can delete your files. It has to be done by somebody on the provider side, and it requires using multiple authentication methods to get in and make any changes to the file or removals. And so it can't be touched by hackers. It can't be changed, and thus hackers can't screw with your backup.
One other thing to add, also with backup, I don't know what organizations you all work for, what fields you're in, but anyone related to anything credit-based has to keep what's called a retention of 7 years on any financial transactions.
Yep.
Yeah, it's beyond compliance. It's if you're in, like, I used to do work for, as a consultant for insurance companies. And when you look at an insurance company, they have the life of the policy plus 7 years that they have to keep all that information around, because there could be an investigation, the federal government could come in, the IRS can come in. So when you look at backups, retention is what you have to target. And that is how long that data will be archived, stored. And there are several levels of archiving that have different cost factors to them. So you just need to know what your compliance rules are for your industry and make sure you follow them for retention. And like Robert said, that data is so next to impossible to get rid of. If it's retained for 30 years, it's usually, well, not usually, it's off-site somewhere in a vault. That's just the reality. Large organizations, probably much larger than the ones you have to have certain companies actually take tapes or CD-ROMs or other storage things and take them off-site to actually house them in a separate location. So that's why it doesn't go away as a backup.
So I'm going to get into the topic for today. Now we've kind of covered some basics here and some things. We're going to talk about how hackers hack you, and we're going to talk about methods they use. So we've talked about phishing emails. Phishing emails, 9 out of 10 breaches responsible for that. Clickbait pop-up. Okay, these are the little pop-ups that pretend to be something they're not. Everybody's seen them. I'll show you some examples in another slide coming up. The ones that say your system's been infected, call this number, or Microsoft, your computer is at risk, call this number. We're about ready to shut down your bank account, call the IRS at this number. Well, I'm going to tell you, there is not a single pop-up that's legitimate that'll ever put a phone number on your computer. And they usually tell you whatever they tell you what not to do is usually the thing to do. So they'll tell you don't hit Control-Alt-Delete or you could damage your system. Well, I would definitely, the way to get rid of them, definitely hit Control-Alt-Delete, go to your task manager and close all your browsers. That's how you get rid of it. You just Control-Alt-Delete, task manager, find all your Chrome instances, your Edge, whatever browser you're using, and kill it. It will disappear. These are browser pop-ups or notifications that are being manipulated by a site you landed on, and thus putting that information up. Sometimes you'll see it in the browser window, sometimes you'll see it down in the corner by your clock. But if you look at the detail, it will tell you that it is a Google Chrome notification or an Edge notification. It is not an actual system notification, but they sure as hell make it look like one. They're very good at it. They'll tell you it's Norton or McAfee or something you probably don't even have installed on your computer. And people just pay attention to it because it throws a big alarm up. Yeah, I'll be posting, James, I'll be posting a video up on the video from today, and we're gonna show you guys how to get a free consultancy after this, where you can go to on our website and you can set up an appointment with us to talk to you about anything. That doesn't cost you anything, and we can, if you want to look for protection, we'll tell you what it'll cost right then and there. We're very good about it. So we're also going to talk about URL phishing. Now, how many of you have misspelled a website like Google and you put one too many G's in it or one too many L's, and all of a sudden you landed on a website that threw up a warning, says your computer's been affected or something like that? That happens all the time. I'm going to give you a great example of something happening in the dental industry. We manage some dentist and endodontics offices, and there's a company called TDO for Endo.com. It's a company that provides software to that vertical. And they have a site called help.tdoforendo.com. Well, hackers went out and registered help.tdoforendo.com. They actually bought that domain. And when you hit that website, it brings up a bunch of stuff saying that it's been infected. Yeah, McAfee will come up. A lot of times it'll pretend to be McAfee, Kaspersky, a lot of that, Letitia. You're going to see that happen. They pretend to be a lot of things. I'm going to show you one of my favorites that was something a hacker did as a joke, but it's just a great obvious example of what they can do. So URL phishing is where they buy domains that are very similar to popular domains, and when you mistype, you land on them. And like people were buying like geeksquadus.com, or they were pretending to be Geek Squad. In fact, that was a huge scam that went on. And they were even buying ads on Google. And that's the next thing we're going to talk about. We're going to show you how to recognize the difference between actual results on Google and Google ads, because they were buying ads on Google. So if you put in Geek Squad, their ad would pop up. People would click on it, think they're going to Geek Squad when they're not. And they would actually make contact with these people. They're talking to a scam center in India or the Philippines. And next thing you know, these people have installed, remote access software to their computer. And now they're pretty much at the whim of the hackers at this point. Those are the four most common ways we see about 98% of the stuff getting through that's not infrastructure hack. And this is what so basically these are the methods. Users busy, distracted. They're very realistic looking, some of them. Sometimes they will infiltrate a friend's email account and send it to you from a friend, maybe infected PDF. Or I've seen invoices come to me from a friend, or a spreadsheet come to me from nobody's never sent me a spreadsheet before, never sent me a PDF before. Exercise zero trust, my friends. Zero trust. If you think it's important or it could be real, delete it and call your friend. Okay. Most likely something's happened. They've got it. Their account's been compromised in some way, shape, or form. And what they did is they just emailed this infected file to everybody inside their list. And that happens a lot. Pop-up lookalikes, that's clickbait, what we just talked about. You're still getting in and you're clicking things you shouldn't. You land on a web page that looks like office.com or looks like Dropbox, Netflix, and you start putting in your passwords and it says, sorry, wrong password. And then you try another one. By the time it's done, you've put in 4 or 5 combinations of passwords and IDs that you've used, and you just gave them all to that hacker. Now they're turning around and putting that stuff out and they're hitting every single service. Google, Netflix, everything, trying to get into those accounts, Facebook, and take over your accounts. You got to be very, very careful. Exercise zero trust. I always tell people, do not use the links in email, period. If you suspect anything, you get a notice, go to that company's website, log in and see for yourself. Do not use the links in the email. Delete it, check it out for yourself. Zero trust of these emails is crucial. All right. And they take this next part is about exploits. So they're using browser exploits, those 0-day things we talked about. People have out-of-date systems, unpatched software, inefficient protection, ineffective protection on their side. All of those things happen. LastPass, if you're using LastPass, I'm not a big fan of password managers or anything that consolidates one place to authenticate against everything. It usually means there's one place to get breached and they get access to everything. So I don't really believe in that. As an expert, I personally don't use it. It's not, there are people that recommend it, but personally don't use it. And I've never had an issue. So I speak to you from a place, I got to knock on some wood. In my 34 years, I've never had an account breached. I've never had anything happen in that way. And we spent a lot of time educating people. So I take that as a good sign that I'm on the right path. Let's start. So we give you some pop-ups. Examples. So here's one that is focusing on the people that are worried about their bodies, the people that are, oh, wow, hey, I won a contest, or, oh, my computer's been affected, call this number. There's a variety of things that show up. I love this one because it's just funny to me. Due to infection, your computer will self-destruct and then explode in 10 seconds. Cure now. This stuff, some of it is this is a very realistic notification. And you can see that this is a Google Chrome notification. It is not a system notification. Clicking on this link will bring you to a web page. That website very well could be infected, and just by hitting that web page, you could start the chain. So just ignore these, close these. You can go into Chrome and turn off notifications for Chrome and make those completely go away. Okay. For any browser I use, I highly recommend you do not enable notifications for Chrome. There's no reason I need my browser to remind me of crap going on websites. That's just annoying. And if you want to, enable it for just certain things, you can. But by default, I would turn everything off. Let's talk about ads versus search results. So this is a screenshot I did for a Geek Squad search, okay? You can see here in Houston, these first 5 or 6. Now you can see this one right here is actually Best Buy, and they actually paid for this. But look at what came up first. It's another company that paid for this AdWord. The first 5 or 6 results on this page in the left-hand side are sponsored. These are people that are paying to show up at the top. Your real results will show up below this area, and you will see it says search results. Everything below that is the actual search result for what you're looking for. It is not an ad. People click on these thinking they are ads when they're not, and hackers know this, and they are buying these keywords. Okay, they're buying them. So you click on them and you go to a site that looks like Geek Squad. Okay, and it basically, you end up contacting someone you shouldn't. I'm not saying these people are something they shouldn't. This is probably a local repair company, but I'm using it as an example of how ads can be bought by anybody. And Microsoft and Google doesn't know who's legitimate and who's not. These businesses have money. They are getting seven figures from people. It is a scam business. And they go after big and small for whatever they can get. And trust me, you want to watch a site that's rather interesting and entertaining. There's a site on YouTube called Scammer Payback. And I absolutely love this guy because I think he's just fun. He's got blue hair, which is just fun in itself. But these guys work with AnyDesk and they pose as legitimate consumers and they backwards scammers. They go purposely try and find scams and hack them. They get into their camera systems, get into their offices. They work with authorities and other places to help get these people busted, close down their operations. But what we find is by getting access to their computers, we find that they have thousands and thousands of victims, big and small. And we've even seen we saw one where they were actually attacking an IT person for nearly $250,000, a very successful IT person who should have known better. And they had to actually call and intervene and tell them, listen, this is where I'm from. You can look up my site. I'm legitimate. You are being scammed. Do not talk to these people anymore. We are monitoring their situation and we're letting you know that we are working with law enforcement and this is happening. Do not do anything further with them. Saved her a bunch of money. And this is what people don't get. They're very convincing. They're very real. And once you get them into your life and get in their radar, it can be very hard to get them out. Prevention is always the cheaper and best method. So I'm going to talk a little bit about phones here. Everybody's got one. These are not toys. These things, don't put games on them. Be careful about the apps you install. Right now, there are 1,000 more mobile devices, than there are actual computers connecting to the internet. I know I got friends that don't own a computer, but they got tablets and phones. And the problem is that we are finding every week there are new apps being discovered that have been posing as something else, collecting information. You guys have seen the congressional stuff about TikTok and Facebook and the privacy violations going on there. I do not have Facebook, any of their apps installed on my phone. I will not install TikTok. I will not install Snapchat. I will not install those apps on my phone because when I do, I give them access to everything on my device. It's very, very imperative. Now, if you want to have access to those things, fine. Use Chrome. Use your browser to access them, or Brave. They have Brave for the phone. Use a browser to access them because the browser does not allow the permissions to the device that the app does. When you install the app, you are agreeing to their user license, which says, oh, I got access to all the files on the system. I got access to your browser history, your GPS, your keyboard, everything you've typed, your histories. They have access to your entire device. But when you access it, almost all these sites have user-friendly mobile versions of their site that can be visited with a browser. Just use the browser. Because on the browser, you can tell the browser, yeah, I want to give this app permission to my mic, or I want to give this app permission to my camera, or my whatever it is you want to give them permission to. I don't give those apps permission to anything on my phone, to be honest. If I'm looking at it, I'm looking at it for the sake of responding to a text or reading something, but I use a bookmark to a page. I do not use the apps. They're just as functional. They work just as well, but you don't have to agree to the user license nor compromise your information that way. Okay. So be very careful. I'm going to tell you the three biggest targets we're seeing on this are gambling. You're going to see gambling, porn, apps that pose to be protection, like virus protection apps, and we're seeing fake VPN apps and fake password manager apps. So there's a lot of them. Use a trusted name. The only thing I don't know about you guys, but on my phone, I have my personal life. I've got my business life in there. I can access my business accounts. The last thing I want is somebody this is the keys to the kingdom, this phone. Last thing I want is somebody getting into this device. So treat it like a real device that's important to keep safe. Do not put crap on it. Do not put games. Do not put things that you do not need, or give permission to companies that have no rhyme or reason for the data they're trying to access other than to sell it to other people. And believe me, if you don't think they do, that's the main reason they have it. Data is the most valuable. Your data, the things you do are the most valuable asset on the internet right now. That's what hackers are purchasing, is access to you. So what happens if you get hacked? Most companies, number one, especially small companies, have no plan for this event. And they get put out of business in a few months over it because they can't get into their systems. They get ransomed. They don't have the money to pay the ransom, or they make the mistake of paying a ransom and the hacker doesn't let them out anyway. There's no honor among thieves. Just because you pay a ransom doesn't mean you're going to get your data back. Doesn't mean they're not going to sell your data. Okay? Doing business with hackers is actually one of the worst things you can do, because all you're doing is telling them you'll pay and you're letting them back. You're setting yourself up to become a victim. We're finding out the statistics: 62% of people that pay hackers actually get hit again by the same groups. They become repeat customers. Others have backups of their data, can restore it, what was stolen, but then the hacker starts selling the information, and because they have compliance issues, like Ernest was talking about earlier, financial, insurance, maybe you're a realtor and has somebody's personal information. We got a lot of independent realtors out there that have people's, they got contracts with people's socials and everything on it like that, and their financial applications, the mortgages, title pay.
OCI.
Yep, that is all compliance violation if it gets stolen, and you are responsible for it if it happens, and you are open to lawsuit. Both primary and third party lawsuits. Some have cybersecurity, believe they're insured. I got cybersecurity insurance. I don't care. Okay. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Here's the fact no one's telling you. Okay. Most claims for breaches are not paid. I can tell you right now that the breach that happened with, actually happened with Change and United Healthcare, as soon, how they found out it was narrowed down to one person? They went and investigated how that information was breached through forensics. And when they did, and they found out that person wasn't using multi-factor authentication. Ernest, have you seen a cyber insurance policy that didn't insist on multi-factor authentication as a prerequisite?
Well, what I've seen is they want plans and full reports. They
Yeah.
want to know that you've been audited and that there's no breaches that haven't been mitigated.
Yeah.
So MFA is it's one
But
of the
my
first
point was,
questions.
though, if they found out you were breached, it's like a prerequisite that you have to have
Yeah.
it. And if you don't, they can use it as a reason not to pay you.
Yes.
They also, if it's tied back to state-sponsored terrorism, like if they tie it back to China, North Korea, a state actor, it is now considered an act of terror. And most policies have an exemption from that. And I'm talking about most commercial policies. And I'll tell you, we actually sat with a board of directors one time for a healthcare company. Said, no, that's not the case. They came back to us a week later and said, I apologize. You're right. It's written in there. It's in the fine print. You got to understand, insurance companies are in the business of collecting premiums, not paying them. They stay in business by making money, not losing it. And I can tell you that insurance companies lost their butt in the first 3 to 4 years of insuring cyber claims. They were getting taken to the cleaners. And so now they've learned. So you have to prove that employees, that you have to prove and show certification of employees going through cyber awareness on a regular basis, some every 6 months, some every year. If it's determined that the breach was caused by a company contractor, an employee, an ex-employee, okay, what we call insider, not going to happen. State actors are going to be people like Russia, China, most groups, most big groups, like the ones you heard of that did like the MGM, Alpha, I'm trying to, R-Evil or Ravel. I'm just trying to think of a bunch off the top of my head. There's so many. A lot of these are basically associated in some way with the Communist Party, with Russian misinformation, or their cyber terrorism groups, North Korea. If they can prove that it came from a group, because if you get infiltrated, you got to report it to the FBI. Okay, if you're breached, you got to make a report to the FBI. Well, by a certain time frame, you have to report it now. And when you report it, they're going to do their own forensics, okay? And they're going to look it up and they're going to try and accredit it to a game. There's two reasons. One, they want to find out how it happened and who did it. And the second part of that is so they can hold these people accountable when they catch them. The more crimes they can accumulate to them, the more damage they can do to these groups, okay? So it's very, very important that they know who did it, how, and why. And so now it's required to be reported. So if
That,
that, most insurance places do not cover for
yeah,
this.
supposed
Kevin,
to be over.
did you have something to contribute? Oh, nope. I
No,
guess
I'm sorry. I didn't know that the mic clicked on. Sorry.
no, no problem. Okay, so takeaways from today. You guys should be, as businesses, you should be preparing frontline employees. You should be training them, cybersecurity awareness training, phishing training, making them aware of how to recognize scams and delete them, how to exercise zero trust, how to report problems within the company. This is something that should be done. Businesses have to leverage several solutions to basically make sure you are covered. In other words, not just endpoint protection. You need to have cloud-based backup with persistent storage. You need to have a cyber recovery plan. You have to have a playbook for what happens if I do and how do I recover from it. And we've done, in fact, Ernest himself actually did a session on it's available on the channel that we did on how to put together a cyber plan. Businesses, you now have to ensure you have business continuity. BDR stands for backup and disaster recovery. So if you do get compromised, how you can get back to business as soon as possible without loss of information or as little downtime as possible. Okay. And then the biggest thing is having a expert that you can talk to as a business professional, people like myself, Ernest, who are experts in our field, who are aware of cybersecurity, how it affects small business, how to protect small businesses. And not all managed service companies know this. I get more business takeaways from managed service companies that have actually screwed up and lets people in by accident. And it's when it's too late, after it happens, it's a lot more costly. And the motto in our company is that it's a lot harder to fix the plane after it's crashed. It's a little late to worry about fixing the plane, the problem with the engine or the wing after it's already on the ground in pieces, because that's what cybersecurity is like. It's a lot cheaper to prevent than it is to recover from a breach. All right, so we're going to open it up to questions. The financial impact, of course, is huge. You could lose your business, your income, possibly your loss of business, and you could be held personally liable depending on the type of business you're in. So time for questions. Let's open up the floor, raise your hand, and I will call on you to unmute your mic if you have questions.
No one has a question. I have a question for everyone. How many people are using Hotmail or Outlook as your primary or to do business with? I'm not seeing. Okay, there.
Yes.
What you need to do, just so you're aware, first of all, you need to make sure you have multi-factor authentication. Secondarily, you can go into your account, go under your security settings. You can go and see all of the potential attacks against you. These are called brute force attacks. And there's not like, I know how to set up security for a network. And I can't do anything because I don't own Microsoft's network.
Yeah.
And they're not looking at shutting down China, Iran. I go into my reports and take a look. I see Vietnam, I see Washington, D.C., which, concerns me. They're welcome to try. I see some come out of the Silicon Valley, but a lot of them are coming from Germany, coming from Russia, coming from Lithuania, right? I mean, Vietnam is another big one. China's another big one, but you can go in and you can see where those things are happening. And you also can see whether they were successfully blocked or not. So if they're not being successfully blocked, you need to be concerned to make sure you turn on the multi-factor and you change your password and you make your environment secure again.
When he means change your password, he means change it on a regular basis, not just, once a year or once every 6 months. Recommended practice used to be every 90 days. They're now saying every 30.
And with that, keep in mind, the attackers now are not looking for the big, they know they can't go after an individual for millions of dollars. So what they want to do is they want to watch what you're doing, where you're spending money, what accounts you have, and even your personal information, because they can sell that on the dark web, or they can use it to maybe potentially open a credit card, especially if your credit report's not locked, and they can steal low numbers from you. And you may not even know it exists until you get a warning from a credit card company at your house saying, oh, you haven't paid your bill in 90 days.
Oh.
You didn't even know you had the credit card.
We were just talking about this the other day, but you guys heard about how Graceland had a fraud incident. Somebody actually used they actually fired up a fraudulent loan and put a fraudulent lien against Graceland, where Elvis used to live, and tried to foreclose on the property. They tried to foreclose on Graceland.
Yeah.
And
The
luckily it
Nigerians,
was caught and they were able to undo it. But I mean, this is the kind of stuff that happens. That just happened high profile, made the news, but this stuff happens all the time. I've been victim of deed fraud.
yeah,
I had somebody in my life that actually titled my house out from under me for $25 at a local at the local they brought it they simply got my information off of HCAD. They went in and made a false deed. And
right.
because the laws are in Texas are really lax regarding deeds, you don't have to show an ID. You don't have to show a payment method. You can walk in with what looks like a notarized document for $25 and file a fraudulent deed. And once it's in place, they won't take it off unless you can prove it's fraudulent. So
Yeah.
basically, I had a $500,000 house titled out from under me one time, and I had a friend call me and ask me, "Hey, did you give your house to this person?" I said, "No." They said, "I was looking you up trying to see if you're still at that address, and it says it belongs to this person." I said, "What?" And that's how I found out. But it wasn't, because I really wasn't monitoring that. Now I pay for a service that monitors that as part of my ID theft. But and we'll talk about some services, some recommendations for you guys. If you're looking for services that'll do that, we'll talk about that in a minute. Uh,
Robert, I have a question.
yeah, sure. Go ahead, Peter.
You mentioned XDR.
Yes.
What is that?
So in our business, there's kind of there's EDR, endpoint detection and remediation. There's MDR, which is like a managed detection and remediation. There's XDR. XDR is kind of the next gen product. Usually has some kind of an AI integrated into it to deal with polymorphic things, polymorphic malware. It also deals with zero-day exploits better. Like the products we use have a 99% detection on zero-day exploits. In other words, we can stop 99% of them or more in milliseconds. Because what it does is it uses AI to look at how you use your computer. It doesn't just look at the computer itself. It's using AI to see how you use your computer, and then it compares how the computer is being used in proper use versus things that happen like, wow, this person's logging in at 2 a.m. and they're not from a location that's normal. That's not a normal behavior, and it isolates it. And then we use that in combination with a SOC. That sounds a security operations center. And a real expert looks at it and says, yeah, that's malicious. We're killing that. And when they kill it in one place, they kill it everywhere. So because of the database being cloud powered, if we find something halfway around the world that's a threat, every endpoint we protect is instantly protected against it, no matter where we find it. So those kind of things are really important. And XDR is that it stands for an extended detection remediation product. So we're looking at network, we're looking at disk, memory, we're looking at habits of how the system is being used and comparing that to actual use to find breaks and patterns. So we do things like that, and we have a product that uses both types of AI. A lot of people don't realize there's two types of AI. There's machine learning. That's AI we teach by what we know, or current data sets of things we know, and then it can adapt. And then there's deep learning AI, which is more what you find in like the self-driving cars in Tesla and Cadillac and things like that.
Robert, not to correct you, but there's more than two types of AI.
Oh, is there a third? Okay, well, those are the only two that I'm aware of. Is there a third
there's
now?
12. There's 12 types.
There's 12 now? Wow.
No, there's been 12.
Now I feel unschooled, man. I tell
No,
you.
what you're talking about is you're talking about the most modern pieces, even generative AI. There's always been logical AI, which is like generative, but generative it does pattern matching and then communicates back to you. Years ago, when I worked at Broadcom, which was CA, we created what were called neural agents. And if you follow AI, there's a thing called neural networks. And neural networks
that's what deep learning uses.
No, it does use it, but that's not neural networks. It uses it. Neural networks were much older. And what we would do is we would watch systems and we would say, okay, this defect or this current incident happened. It was identified this as an incident. Now, what do the humans do to fix it? And then we would score it. So if you went off an 80% factor, you would say 4 out of every 5 times they reboot the system. So when that would happen, you'd automatically reboot the system so that you could recover systems much quicker, reduce the mean time between failures.
Yep.
So we've been using that for years. Years ago,
Monica,
I
I see
used
your
to
hand. I'll get to you in just a second. Sorry, go ahead, Ernest.
I used to play a game called Battle Chess in the early 90s. That was AI. And what the brilliant part about that was, all that did was it looked for pattern matching. So when you moved a piece, it would look at the whole board and say, okay, this is an Isomov, or this is a this guy's gambit, and it would move the piece the way that person would have moved it. So it was really very, very difficult to beat the chess game if you had it on the highest level.
The way it was explained to me in the last this was one I went to that was specifically about how it was being used in our sector, for cybersecurity is
Right.
machine learning can, like, it could look and identify an animal by how many legs, how many that it
Yeah.
had 2 ears, legs, a tail, but it couldn't tell the difference between a cat and a dog. Where deep learning AI is more like a brain, and it learns, and it can actually distinguish those minute differences between that, and is actually a lot more detailed.
Right.
And it can learn on the fly a lot better too. It acts more like a human brain.
Right. And that's supervised versus unsupervised, right?
Yeah.
And one set says, here's all the data, you figure it out. And the other one says, here's the data, this is a dog. And it goes through all the data and it says, okay, now I've got a catalog of what a dog is. Now you may put a picture of a dog in that it doesn't recognize, and it'll say it's not a dog. But when it does recognize a dog from its catalog that it's been trained on, it will tell you it's a dog.
Exactly.
So that's the difference. And that, I mean, we use that at Microsoft.
That's a whole nother conversation we'll have.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we'll do a session on AI for something, because we can talk about that for a long time.
Thanks for the information.
Yeah, no, not a problem. Monica, I see you got your hand up.
Yes, hello. I was wondering, you said that you don't really feel comfortable with LastPass or anything like that, where it collects all the passwords in one place.
Yes.
What do you recommend, especially if we're supposed to be changing passwords every 30 days and not all are synced on the same dates? You know what I mean? All the different applications. Like, what is your suggestion?
I would develop a pattern for me, and especially for me, because I'm dealing with multiple environments that aren't even my own. Now we use something that's built for our industry, that's built into our solution to manage passwords for our clients. But so I don't have to obviously remember those. But just as a practice, I pick a methodology of information that isn't necessarily available, that most people wouldn't have, stuff that wouldn't be public. And I use that in combination with other things within my life, maybe from my childhood. I'll give you a good instance. I'm a car guy. Okay. So for some non-essential things, I would choose a car year, a car make, a brand, or something different about that car that was unique, that nobody would have known about. And I combine that into a password, because passwords can be phrases as well. They just have to have certain character sets. And so I have a pattern in which I build my passwords out of different information, and I vary it up every couple of months with something different. I've never had a password. I've had passwords compromised through hacks, but I've never had anybody just go in and hack my password straight out. Like everybody, AT&T giving out things like that, and everybody has a password breach that way. And then when I find that, I change up if I find that a password's been compromised that way, I will change my system for what I use for that differently. So it'll be a little harder to, it won't be guessable. The biggest problem with most people, you guys want to hear something funny? I was watching, how many of you seen the show, The Weakest Link? My wife loves this show, and I was watching with her last night, and the question came up in one of the rounds: what is the most commonly hacked password, numeric password? And I just was flabbergasted by this, but it is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, I knew that.
Just like, you gotta be kidding me. It's like right out of Spaceballs, the movie, or something. It's stuff like that is the reason why we have cybersecurity instances. That's not a password, that's a joke. I laughed when I heard that. I laugh now when I talk about it. And your passwords, this is your life, people. You got to treat it, and it's not a game to hackers. They will gladly take every dime you have and leave you penniless. So you need to be very, very careful. You need to exercise zero trust, and you need to put some thought into your passwords. I do not store them anywhere where they could be stolen. They're in my head, and I develop a method, something I can remember. And maybe I write it down on a piece of paper and put it in my wallet if I'm just learning it, because I am getting older. I'm 58 now and I can't remember stuff like I could when I was, years ago. So sometimes I'll write it on a piece of paper, put it someplace, that I can keep it until I got it learned. I use different passwords for different things. I use different passwords for email. I use different passwords for movie like Netflix and Hulu, and I use different passwords for my banks. That way, if one gets compromised, it doesn't compromise everything. Very, very important to use different passwords. Eric asked about PayPal. PayPal's fine. Thanks, Monica, for joining us. We'll put out the recording. I do want to put this out. I know we're running out of time. We're at 3:08. I want to talk about what a complete cybersecurity solution looks like. Complete cybersecurity isn't just endpoint. Complete cybersecurity is using an AI-powered XDR endpoint. It includes monitoring by an actual SOC or a security operations center 24/7. It includes training for the people that for your end users, your employees, yourself. Management of the computers to make sure they're up to date and they stay up to date and they stay compliant, and monitoring those devices. Cloud-based backups, encrypted backups that use persistent storage to make sure your data is safe. Proper management of your Office 365 or Google environments. Okay, making sure multi-factor is not just enabled, it's enforced. You have to use it. It isn't just there for convenience, it actually forces you to use it. Cybersecurity training, again, is not just watch a webinar, go on. It should be a continual part of your program. In other words, you should be learning all the time. It changes all the time. We're learning new stuff. So keeping that up is important. And then having a monitoring system that's watched by professionals over all that is what a complete solution looks like. Our solution actually has been endorsed. It's been reviewed and endorsed by a company called Cysurance, which is a cybersecurity insurance company. Their only prerequisite is that you use our solution on every one of your endpoints. And if you do, they include $1 million of coverage right out of the gate. 24 hours, you're covered. No prerequisites, no fine print, no nothing. We have never had a breach on our network. We've never had a company compromised. We've never had anybody ever had to file a claim. This is why they like us. This is why they use us. This is included in the cost of our product, and it's very reasonable. It starts around $34 an endpoint.
With that, Robert, are you able to identify the state actors easy?
Oh yeah, we actually use if you guys, I was going to tell you, if you want a demo and want to see behind the curtains what we do, we use a full-featured SIEM. That stands for a security, integrity, and event monitoring system. So we record everything that's in the system, and we are able to comply that against the MITRE database, which is an international database against known threats, hackers, groups, what methods they use. And we'll give you a peek behind the curtains of how we know all that and the methods we use if you schedule a demo. If you go to this website right here, all we ask is a little 3-part. Fill in some information about you, how many endpoints your office has. We don't care if it's 1 or 5 or 10. We don't care about size. There's no minimum, no contracts, no setup fees. And then how we can help. If there's anything specific to your specific situation that you're having an issue with, slow computers, you're worried about your network, you don't have a firewall, you need better backups, whatever it might be, put that information in there. This goes straight into our database. As soon as you fill it out, you're going to go into my calendar. This actually interfaces with my interactive calendar, and you can set up a time, a place. It'll send you an invite for your calendar with a Teams meeting, and that is free. We'll give you an hour of time to talk about it. We'll give you a price to do it. You can do it if you want or not, but we'll give you a peek behind the curtain, show you what we do and what it includes. And all we're asking for is a little bit of your time to do that. So check it out. I guarantee you will not be disappointed. Very cool stuff. That is all I've got for you guys today. I really appreciate everybody's attention and coming in today and being a part of this. We had a good crowd today. Before we close out, does anybody have any more questions? I see, Deborah, you're asking about passwords suggested by systems good to use. It depends on the system. Some of these systems will provide like a pretty complex password of just gibberish, which is always good because gibberish is hard to decipher, but it's also very hard for you to remember without having to actually record it somewhere. So I would say develop a system of your own that you can easily recognize the password, remember it, so you don't have to go, oh, damn, I don't remember my password. I got to reset it every time. Yeah, find a way that you can do that. Giselle, go ahead.
Talking to me?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, this might be for all you are way above my business. I used Hotmail for years. Then I changed over to Gmail for several years now, at least 10. And now every 10 minutes or more, I get a request to change my, or put in my password for Hotmail or change the password for Hotmail.
Is it coming to you via email or is it popping up when you try to access it?
No, I don't access Hotmail at all because if there are people who write to that Hotmail, it automatically goes to my Gmail.
Yeah.
But why does Hotmail all of a sudden get active and wants me to put a password in?
It could be that email address was just discovered through a breach or something like that. You got to remember AT&T just had a gigantic breach where they gave out information. Yeah, thank you very much, Reverend. Appreciate your comments.
Well, there
we'll
is
have the recording posted. But yeah, this kind of stuff happens. So give you an idea, AT&T 3 months ago, and they've been breached a couple of times, but this last breach was particularly large. They gave up about 120 million accounts. About 7.5 million, I believe, were current customers, but the rest of them were all their past customers. And the problem about that is in our dark web reports that came up, and I'm an AT&T customer, it exposed my social security number, and it was clearly in the breach. So we have in our program, we have a dark web monitor program. We monitor the dark web for breaches, and if your information shows up, it'll show you what was exposed and when and where and by who and what information was available. And in that breach, we actually learned that AT&T not only exposed passwords and personal information, they actually exposed social security numbers, which is extremely dangerous.
Yeah, there is another. Well, I'm sorry, but I have another big problem. I fell for a scam yesterday, and instead of $19.95, I got charged $219, and I
call your bank right away.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
And they said I have to wait 2 weeks before I can start a dispute.
No, what bank are you with?
RBC in Canada.
Okay, you're in Canada. I'm not sure about the laws there and how they work, but I would definitely cancel that card at this point and get a new one. Don't give them any opportunities to cycle that anywhere. Cancel it, get it off your card, and get a new one issued immediately.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And one other thing about her using forwarding from Hotmail,
yeah,
because she's forwarding, it's going to drop that connection. And when an email does come from Hotmail to go to her Gmail, it's going to ask for authentication.
But it has never
Oh,
done
that's true.
it for
Yeah, it's
years.
going to do that now because they've enacted some new security protocols for that
Yep.
in the last month.
Yep.
So that may be why you're seeing that now. Somebody asked about Norton. I'm going to tell you, Norton is the biggest joke in the business. If you are a LifeLock customer, I feel sorry for you. Get your money back. Go find a different program. I will tell you, I'll post a email to link to everybody up here right now. If you're looking for a good product, this is not my product. I happen to be on the board of directors. I don't get a dime out of it, but I will post it up to everybody. It is esure.ai for those this is for personal coverage. That's equivalent. That's better than, it's the same product that powers our business side, but it is for personal. It's esure.ai. And they have a family plan that covers like up to 5 computers for $40 a month, no contracts. It includes title insurance. It includes ID theft, everything. So it'll cover your properties that you own, not just your primary, but any properties you own. And so it's really good coverage for the money. And it is using the same XDR AI-powered endpoint product in SOC that we use in our commercial. It uses the exact same personnel we use in our business product for the personal side. So they just extended it into the personal medium, and it has its own insurance policy that is on the consumer side, underwritten by the same company, Cysurance. So pretty good stuff.
but you can see all the benefits about it there, and they have single individual plans that are cheaper, but you should definitely check it out. Yeah, Symantec and LifeLock. So funny because LifeLock's been hacked like, I don't know, 5, 6 times. And it was funny, the founder of LifeLock, you guys probably remember when he came out and put his information out and said, here's my social security number. Stupid mistake. You don't ever challenge hackers like that. And literally within a month, he was hit really hard. And then he was later sued. So LifeLock is now owned by Norton Symantec, and Norton has got the worst product on the market. If you really want to slow down your computer and make it, semi-useless, that's a good way to do it. But if you are looking for a business product, I definitely invite you to come talk to us. I believe we have the best cyber solution out there because it incorporates financial protection right into the plan at no extra cost to you. The second thing is if you're looking for the personal product, look up Esure.ai. Same technology, but that is where you can buy the consumer product for your home and your kids and protect your family. By the way, for those of you that want to know, at the bottom of our website, if you scroll down to the bottom, there is a training. There's a link to a training portal, and it is free. And we have a family edition there, and it is specifically meant to train moms and dads about being better digital parents. It'll introduce you to digital parenting tools. It'll talk about the threats of why they're hacking schools, the treasure trove they're getting from there, and how they're using social media to put it together. So very highly recommend if you are parents, go check it out. It is free. There's no testing. It's informational only, and it's to help you understand what's going on, how they're attacking your kids and your families, and how to be better digital parents. All right. I'm going to close it out. Anybody have any last questions before we close out? Ernest, thank you again for being here and participating today, buddy.
Glad to do it, and I hope it's been helpful for everyone so that they really can protect themselves and their businesses.
Me too. Me too. We do this because we want to help. We want to offer a solution, but at the same time, this is really purely about education. Anybody have any last questions? I was trying to go through the chat here, make sure we asked about cash apps. Yeah, I don't really recommend it. I would use Zelle. You can use Zelle from your bank, things that are integrated in your bank app, but I'm not a big fan of using third-party apps for cash. I don't use Facebook Marketplace to send money. That I don't necessarily consider Facebook to be a secure place.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah, I'm not
Or
big.
Western Union. Don't use Western unless you know that person. Do not use Western Union.
Yeah.
No crypto. None of that. It's
I was just
dangerous
looking
stuff.
back through questions. Yeah, McAfee, not a fan. We put our product in and we find stuff. Even WebRoot, which is a commercial product, we went in just about 6 months ago. We put our product into it's a secure import export company that does stuff through the Houston Ship Channel, and we found 2 Trojans on their accounting server with WebRoot installed protecting it. And found it within the same hour we installed and isolated it and got it out. But yeah, WebRoot, not a big fan of these products. They really are not very thorough, and there's a lot of ways to bypass them. One last note, and I'll have this just on the recording. Make sure you do not leave third-party remote access apps that you are not using. TeamViewer, AnyDesk. If you are not using these products on a regular basis, there is no reason to have them installed on your computer. These are things that sit around and are out there and waiting for people to attach to them. And right now, they are some of the most common ways scam artists, like I'm sure the one person that was on here earlier, they probably used TeamViewer. A lot of them are now. They use legitimate tools that we use in our business to access it, and then leave those things up to access your computer later. But when you don't know it. So do not use these tools. They're not meant for one-time access. They're meant to leave a hole behind to get back into later when you don't know about it. They're meant for unintended access as well as first time. But if it's running in the system tray or in the background, not a good thing. Pull it off your computer. Doesn't need to be there. Make sure a legitimate IT company like us, to give you an idea, we have a remote when we're working with somebody we've never worked with before. We use what's called session-based. You download it, it runs in memory. It does not install itself. It runs that one time. When you are done, it disconnects. It cannot be used again. If you try and run it, it won't run. It's session-based remote access. So it's only good for the one time we connect, and at that point, it's dead. And it doesn't actually install anything on your system. That's what proper IT companies should be using. So anyway, we're going to wrap it up. Ernest, thanks again for being here. Everybody, thank you for watching, and we'll put the recording up for you to see within the next day or two. I'll send an announcement on the board for this meeting when it's posted with a link. We put up our YouTube channel. I'll put a link to it so you guys can watch it. Thanks again, and everybody have a great day.
Hi, I'm Robert with AIO Integrations. We provide top-of-the-line cybersecurity solutions. Don't be fooled. There are numerous digital threats that can destroy your company's ability to do business. Hacks, ransomware, employee error, and nefarious actors can take your business down. For some reason, people have been sold the myth that antivirus protects them from hackers. Nothing could be further from the truth. The fact is that hackers don't hack networks in small business, they hack people. And then they infiltrate and do what they need to do after they have already gained access through people. But people are their first and most reliable way to get into your business. AIO CyberGuard not only protects your business by monitoring it 24/7 for threats and protecting your endpoints, but we train your employees on how to recognize those threats very easily, and we protect your business with a $1 million financial protection plan. You need to ensure that your business stays in business. We make sure that it does.